Item 6B, adopt resolution increasing the expenditure authority of the city manager and city attorney from $25,000 to $75,000.
Director DiMartini.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Keith DiMartini. I'm the Finance Director for the City, and it's my pleasure to present the request to Council to increase the expenditure authority of the City Manager and the City Attorney. The objective of this item before you this evening is twofold. First, the City's current purchasing policies are outdated and need to be modernized. Our processes need to be adjusted to increase efficiencies and reduce processing time to support quicker and more effective project delivery. And second, as we roll out the new policy, we are requesting the City Council to approve of increasing the expenditure authority of the City Manager and the City Attorney. The city's purchasing policy was last updated in 1988. It set dollar thresholds for the city manager to approve contracts at $25,000. In 2000, the city attorney was authorized to settle claims up to $25,000. In 2002, the city council authorized the city attorney to expend up to $100,000 to mitigate damages involving health and safety issues such as sewer overflows. These authorization limits have not been updated since those dates. Since then, the cost of services, materials, supplies, technology, and claims has increased by inflation and other economic factors. This has resulted in the need to request City Council authorization for items that are considered more routine and basic operations. A city manager contract authority survey was conducted a year and a half ago for cities in San Mateo County. The table on this slide summarizes the results. Of the 19 cities who responded to the survey, the city manager's authority ranged from as low as $20,000 to as high as $100,000, with any contract amount greater than the city manager threshold requiring City Council approval. San Bruno's city manager authority of $25,000 is tied for second to the lowest with Portola Valley. Both Woodside's and Portola Valley's annual budget and volume of contracts executed is significantly lower than San Bruno's. Also, San Bruno's population is the 5th highest in the county and has the lowest per capita limit compared to our peers. Staff is recommending the expenditure threshold to increase from $25,000 to $75,000 for the city manager and city attorney for all routine claims. This increase is in line with CPI, the Consumer Price Index inflation, over the past 30 years. It is also more in line with the current approval thresholds of other cities in San Mateo County, particularly those with similar population, expenditure budgets, and contract volumes. Items under $75,000 are considered to be more routine and basic operations, and staff would like to focus effort on bringing larger, more policy-focused items before council for review and your consideration. For workers' compensation claims, the approval authority will increase with the city manager's approval up to $75,000. The Council's action tonight will not change the action taken in 2002 to authorize the City Attorney to settle claims up to $100,000 regarding any immediate remediation required due to a health and safety issue, such as a sewer overflow. By increasing the thresholds, the City will likely realize time and cost savings. Drafting, reviewing, obtaining approval, and presenting staff reports, resolutions, and other materials takes quite a bit of time of staff. On average, it could take up to 4 weeks to prepare all of the necessary documents to include in a staff report to City Council. Although fewer items will come before Council, as indicated in the report, staff does not anticipate this limiting or reducing any opportunity for guidance and feedback provided by the City Council or members of the public. Feedback will be requested during the annual operating and capital budget process. City Council will continue to receive staff reports of accepting projects as complete, and staff will plan to shift focus on providing more frequent project status updates during the quarterly financial updates to Council. Although not directly related to what's before Council this evening, Staff believe it's important for council to know that a new enhanced purchasing policy will be adopted that guide all city staff how purchases are to be made in the future. Over the past 3 months, staff have reviewed the existing 1988 policy and department practices and have recommended enhancements. Staff have developed a new comprehensive policy with the major components of the new policy shown here on this slide. The new policy includes all major components of the procure-to-pay process, starting with obtaining budget, putting a project out to bid if necessary, and all the way through to the receipt of goods and paying for those services and goods. Just to highlight a few of the items in the new policy. For contracts, the policy will standardize various compliance items, so staff confirm that all city vendors have a business license and required insurance, among other items. The policy will ensure we execute purchase orders for most purchases to hold our vendors accountable and to produce more accurate financial projections. And the policy will standardize how the city receives materials so we more accurately and timely match a purchase order to a receipt of goods and materials to an invoice. This will result in faster payments to our vendors. And the policy will encourage more paperless processing by attaching electronic documents to purchase orders and invoices. Staff plan to roll out the new policy in the coming weeks after City Council's approval of the threshold increase being requested this evening. A training will be provided to city staff involved in the procure-to-pay process, and the new standardized forms and templates will be used going forward. So my request to council this evening is to adopt a resolution increasing the expenditure authority of the city manager and the city attorney from $25,000 to $75,000. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions for the finance director from council? Marty.
Thank you. I remember working here 6-7 years ago and thinking, wow, why at 25,000 we have to go to council to approve some repair that was needed out either in the street or whatever. So I think it's a good idea that we do increase it. Although a little concerned about going from 25,000 to 75,000 and not being really clear on the reporting of those expenditures. So I'm in favor of the increase to 75,000, but I would like to have something concise explaining why, how much these expenditures were made. And that could be reported in the quarterly, that would be fine, because that's the overall update, but to have these specific items lined out, not having a staff report, I understand that it's a lot of time, but just a couple sentences explaining what happened, when it happened, and how much it costs. Following up on that, just wanted to clarify, so now a project that's under $75,000 does not have to go out to bid. It could be, okay, just want to make sure, okay.
We can clarify.
Go ahead.
So,
City manager.
this does not change any of the purchasing or bid requirements at all. It is strictly the signature authority level. I think it's also important to note that the City Council currently receives in your packet a register of all of the checks that were cut. And so you are receiving that information even now of the expenditures on a monthly basis. And so, but I don't know, I didn't want to cut you off from your questions.
No, that's fine.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off either,
Please,
but I
City
do want to
Attorney.
add one other thing that's important since the bid issue came up. So under state law, the Public Contracts Code currently requires that all public projects, public works projects of construction and so on that are over $5,000 be publicly bid. So it's $5,000, which is of course far below even the original $25,000 signature authority threshold. So in this report, we're only talking about the signature authority, not the requirement to bid. That requirement is still as it is now.
I recall there's a couple different bidding processes that we deal with in Public Works. There's the informal bid process up to a certain amount. I don't remember what it is. Is that the 25,000, the informal?
No, so there are various thresholds for that. The state law supersedes city policies regarding formal or informal. So if it's a public works project as defined by state law, it has to be bid irrespective of what city ordinances say. I think what you're referring to are procurement of goods and services that are not public works projects. And so for those things, there are certain thresholds and policies which the finance director has indicated are now going to be further standardized to make sure that there's additional internal controls on all those and that everybody's following those policies that you're referring to. And that's for the procurement of goods and services that are not covered by the Public Contracts Code.
Thank you. To follow up on our city manager's comment regarding the warrant register with each individual item, it does have a company, it has a price, but it doesn't really state what it's about. So I think as we transition to this higher level of approval, it would just be nice to know what actually those charges were that are new. So that's my comment.
Laura?
Through the chair. So I agree with some of the comment that was made in reference to our monthly, I remember as a new council member, you're trying to make sense of all this, and you're looking at all those expenses and the checks that get cut. And I always thought this report could use some more information. So I would really like to see myself as well getting more detail on the report, a category, a department code, something that tells us sort of where we're at with those dollar amounts, especially as we move through the fiscal year. Instead of, and we can talk about this further later on, but I also thank you for bringing this forward, because I remember looking at the $25,000 myself as well, and looking at this, and I know all too well what it takes to put a presentation. Where I work, we do presentations to officers, and there's a lot of, you do dry runs, you do draft versions of it, and a lot of time gets put into that presentation. I want to see the work get done, and I want to see staff be able to make decisions. There is transparency, because nothing ever cut is not public, and that we can question it. We can bring it up at a council meeting here if we want to question an item on one of our packets. And we want to bring, as you said in your presentation, let's get more things on policies and procedures that we can update and streamline and improve. So I thank you for the presentation.
Michael?
Chair. I just wanted to share that at the county, they have a $100,000 limit for board approval. So anything under $100,000 gets approved by the directors. So I think that this limit is appropriate for us. And I've also had to write some of the justification reports, so I know it's a lot of work, and a lot of them end up under consent anyway. So I think this is definitely going to help streamline it. I wanted to echo the comments as well about the usefulness of the warrant register that we get, because it is hard to associate this list of expenditures to anything that makes sense. And in the past, I've submitted questions about what project or what the expenses were related to, but it is a lot to go through. So if we could come up with a way to make that information more meaningful, I think it would be helpful. The county has a website where they actually post all their expenses, and you can download the entire thing, and you can search by vendor and see what vendor is getting contracts and how much the county spends with them, and you can sort it all kinds of different ways. And I don't know if our system is if we can make it work that way, but it might be a helpful way of making this information more readily available and more meaningful. Okay. All right.
I think the $75,000 is very reasonable. I tend to agree about the warranty list, which is long and very detailed as far as how much and who gets it, but not much other than that. Maybe we could look at something that, if it's not routine, if it's over $25,000 or something, that there's a little more detail. But I think other than that, it's fine.
And then just for myself on the warrant register, I mean, keep in mind that we get, it could be a refund to a resident from their water bill. So it could be for $100. So I think what we're all trying to ask is for something that is really of more of a larger scale, something that's not going to require staff to now double their work as we're now trying to improve and streamline. I've always thought that this needed to go up, as Marty said, but you know, when I worked here, it has never gone up. And I started, you know, I worked here back in the 80s. So, and I believe directors are maybe at 5,000 or a small amount as well.
15.
And I know we're not discussing that tonight, but my point is that it hasn't been addressed since 1988. And I also want to thank the finance director and the finance department for the fact of actually going and reviewing, updating, being proactive, not being directed by council, but through the manager and through the finance director and the finance department being proactive to streamline, to simplify, and to make best practices and better protocols. So I want to thank you for that as well. This is a resolution. Is there any action from council?
I'll make a motion to introduce and approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion made in second.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor O'Connell?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye. And then thank you for the report, and then you have the feedback from the entire council in regards to the warrant
Thank you.
register and
I appreciate
information.
that. Thank you very much.